So we are going to be continuing with this chapter. So as I explained earlier on, if, for you to be able to communicate, if I can maybe do a small recap, for you to be able to communicate outside your network, you need a special device called a default gateway. A default gateway is simply a router device. Now, for two networks to communicate together, you need what they call a default gateway. And a default gateway is typically the section or the interface of the router that is connected to your network. Remember, your router has one part connected to your one interface connected to your interface service provider, and the other interface connecting to your local network. So it is simply moving data from your network to the ISP server, the internet service provider's network, where the internet is. Okay, so for it to do that, it has to be able, your devices have to be able to communicate with the device called the default gateway, which is that part or interface of the router that belongs to the same network as the PCs themselves. Okay, so a router or a layer 3 switch can act as a default gateway, and the features of the default gateway are very simple. Number one, it must have an IP address in the same range as the rest of the devices on the local area network. It should be able to accept data from the local network, and is also capable of forwarding traffic off the LAN, meaning that it can receive data from the local area network and forward it outside the local area network. That's the whole idea of the router or layer 3 switch. And then, of course, it should be able to route to other networks. So if a device has no default gateway, or it has a bad default gateway, the traffic can never leave outside the local area network. So lack of a default gateway leads to traffic not being able to be accessible within outside the network to the devices. And those addresses will include the default gateway address. That is in IP version 4. So in IP version 6, systems do something called neighbor discovery. IP version 6 systems have the mechanisms of being able to detect each other, as well as detecting the router on the network and automatically configuring themselves. And they do this by using messages called the router solicitation messages. IP version 4 devices will send messages called router solicitation, which guides the router on what to do with traffic for which it cannot find a route and where to send it to. So all devices on a local area network need to have the default gateway of the router if they intend to send traffic out of the network. So all end devices on a network normally have what they call a routing table. Even our normal PCs have routing tables, because the PCs need routing tables to know where to send traffic. Because a PC needs to know whether traffic is going to be sent on the local network or it's going to be sent out of the network. So how do you know the PC routing table? You use a simple command called netstart r. So I'll demonstrate that with my PC using my command prompt. So of course, the first thing I need to do here is I need to know what is the IP address of my computer. CLS helps me clear my screen. ipconfig helps me know my IP address. So my actual IP address is 192.168.6.100. So if I'm to look at my PC's routing table, I simply use the command netstart with an R, means for routing, and it will show me my routing table. So this here is my PC's routing table. So if I look at it and try to interpret it, here is number one. For any traffic that is going to the same network as my PC. So if you see my PC is 192.168.6.100, for that network 192.168.6, okay, so this network here, the 192.168.6, the first 3 octets represent the network. So a network is therefore represented as 192.168.6.0, because these first 3 represent the network and the last one represents the host. The host on this network is 110, that is for my PC. So for traffic like this, the routing